Hi folks, welcome to the Ramble. So last week I was checking the mail and actually, let me just show you what happened. I got this little flyer from Neil Parrott, my local Republican delegate, and I just wanted to do a quick little video to show you what I'm going to do with it. And that's what I would love to do to him on election day too. He's probably going to get reelected, but I'm going to do my part to do this for real. And I'm recycling it because I know Neil would hate that. And then just yesterday, I was checking the mail again, and I got this, which is a mailer from the Larry Hogan campaign, the Republican governor of my state who is running for re-election. And I've said many times that I am not voting for Larry Hogan, that I wouldn't vote for Larry Hogan. This mailer from the Larry Hogan campaign is targeted at Democrats. Like me. It even has a picture of a lady on, I guess, the front of it. And her name, according to the quotation, is Sandra Batterden. And she is saying, I voted for Democrats all my life, but I'm voting for Governor Hogan. He cares about women's issues. He cares about the environment. I'm a Democrat for Hogan because he'll make great strides for Maryland. Since he's reaching across the aisle, I think voters can reach across the aisle. I've said before, I will say here again, because this video is going up the day before Election Day. We're here. We made it. The midterms are tomorrow as this video is being released. So I'm going to say one more time that moderate Democrats, centrist Democrats like Sandra here, are going to be the death of us all. Sandra and anybody else who is thinking like this on the eve of the election, if you are a Democrat or a Democrat-leaning person, a left-leaning person, and you're saying to yourself, well, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but I think Republican candidate X is doing a lot of reasonable things, and he's pretty moderate, and he's reached across the aisle several times, and he doesn't seem like he's that much of an extremist, and he seems like a reasonable candidate. I'm going to vote for him, and yeah, I'll vote for Democrats other places, and I definitely don't want to support Trump, but I'm going to vote for this guy. Here's the thing. Here's the flaw in that logic, as I see it. Sandra says, well, since Governor Hogan is reaching across the aisle, I think voters can reach across the aisle as well. If Governor Hogan or any Republican politician really cared that much about the people on the other side of the aisle, they wouldn't reach across the aisle. They would cross the aisle. They would no longer be members of the Republican Party because it's not just Trump. Trump is the most obvious and dangerous symptom, the most urgently in need of treatment of all the symptoms of the problem. But the problem is more deeply rooted in America in general, let's be honest about it, but also in the Republican Party. The Republican Party is what produced Donald Trump. The Republican Party is what is supporting and sustaining Donald Trump. And people like Larry Hogan, the supposedly reasonable ones, who nonetheless remain in the party and continue to rally votes for the party, are part of that problem. He doesn't necessarily have to become a Democrat. He doesn't have to jump over and become a Democrat, because honestly, I think Larry Hogan would be a shitty Democrat. Although there are lots of Democrats who are shitty Democrats, so he'd be right at home. But if he really cared, he would leave the Republican Party. But he doesn't, because he believes in the values of the Republican Party. And what are those values? Those values are not respect for the rights of women, despite what they may play act when it's politically convenient for them. They don't care about respecting the rights of women. They don't care about the environment. They don't care about the working class or the poor. They don't care about the marginalized. They don't care about civil rights and equal rights for black people or lesbians and gays or trans people. They don't care about recognizing the validity of non-binary people. They don't care about making it a better place to live if you're an immigrant or if you're a member of a minority religion or if you have a disability or if you are living with mental illness or if you have any number of other disadvantages. They don't care. They see you as a burden. They see you as an obstacle. They see you as a potential scapegoat that they can point to when they need somebody to blame for the problems that in all likelihood they themselves either created or are exacerbating by their policies. That's what they do with the people across the aisle. So if Larry Hogan was really that great of a dude, he wouldn't be running as a Republican. And if you are a Democrat or anyone other than a Republican who is voting for him or someone like him, a quote-unquote reasonable, moderate Republican, then you're not being reasonable, you're not enlightened, you're not unbiased, you're not doing the civil, mature thing by reaching across the aisle. What you're doing is you're being a sucker. You've allowed yourself to be conned. To say, I'll vote for the Republican because that's a reasonable Republican. In this day and age, in 2018, in the era of Donald Trump in the White House, in the era of calling out the military to defend us against immigrants because, oh no, there's immigrants coming. What are we going to do? Immigrants? In that day and age, when that man is doing those things, and it's working, and it's rallying votes, and the Republican Party is not only sticking by him, but echoing his message, underlining him and rallying to his cause. In that day and age, there's no such thing as a reasonable Republican. Because the reasonable people, if they were that reasonable and they were that courageous and brave and principled, they wouldn't even be there. It's time to just say, okay, you know what? If you willfully choose to associate with this organization after all the policies that it has promoted and tried to get passed out of all the people that it has elected who have done such incredible harm to this country and the people in it and the environment and the economy and our society in general, if you willfully choose to run as a candidate representing that party, then you don't get our vote. It doesn't matter how reasonable you seem. That's a choice that just can't be overlooked. The stakes are too high. And I think there are a lot of people, including Democrats like Sandra here, who think they're being reasonable people, who just still don't get what fucking game is being played here. I want to make it clear here that I'm not talking to Republicans when I make this video. Hopefully I've made that clear already, but just in case anybody, because I know that whenever anybody talks politics and whenever anybody takes a side in a political discussion, there's always someone who jumps up because they think they're so clever and they say, well, you're never going to persuade anybody like that. You know what? I'm not trying to persuade Republicans. That's a lost cause. That's a waste of my time. That's a waste of everyone's time. Let Republicans do whatever the fuck they want. I'm not trying to get Republicans to flip and come vote for Democrats. I'm trying to get people who are in the middle or are leaning toward the left but are maybe either considering not voting because they don't think it matters or considering voting for a few Republican candidates because they think they're reasonable people. I'm talking to people who are more or less on our side, who just need to be pulled a little bit further and convinced of the necessity, of the urgency of not only going to the polls and voting, but voting for Democratic candidates, voting for progressive candidates, and not voting for Republicans, even if they seem like they're reasonable people. The stakes are far too high for people like me and for people who are more marginalized and underprivileged than me, who are seriously, imminently threatened. And for the soul of this country, for God's sake. I know I'm an atheist, and a lot of atheists tend to shy away from language like that. They don't talk about things in terms of, the spirit or the soul. But metaphorically speaking, the soul of this country. What kind of a country do you want this to be? Do you want this to be a country that at least tries to live up to the lofty ideals of Emma Lazarus's poem on the base of the Statue of Liberty? Do you want to be that country, the country described in that verse, that lifts our lamp beside the golden door, that welcomes the people of the world, that is the refuge for the refugees, that says, come here, we welcome you. We will help you make a better life. We will make you a part of our society. Or do you want to be the kind of people that send military troops to the border to fend off a caravan of refugees who are unarmed, who are desperate, who are walking for the most part up through Mexico to get here, because that's how desperately they want to find a better situation for themselves. These people are heroes. These are brave people. These are people who are doing something incredible to try and find a better life for themselves and their families. And do you want to be the type of country that opens the door when they get here and say, come on in, welcome you, let us find out what you need? Let us help you build that better life here. Do you want to be that kind of country? Or do you want to be the kind of country where we not only close the gate, but we point weapons at those people? And we treat them like enemies, and we treat them like invaders. And we talk about how they're drug dealers, and they're child molesters, and they're violent gang members, and they're terrorists. Although actually, often they don't even say terrorist. They say Middle Eastern people, because in the minds of these bigoted bastards, Middle Eastern person and terrorist, those are synonyms. That's all you need to know. Oh, he's from the Middle East. Oh, he might be a terrorist. Better not let him in. Is that the kind of country you want to be? I mean, I know in many respects that's the kind of country that we are right now, but is that the kind of country you want to be? Or do you want to be better than that? Do you want to try to live up to the ideals in the New Colossus, the ideals in the Declaration of Independence, the ideals in the Constitution once we got rid of all the slavery shit? Is that the kind of country you want to be? Do you want to try to live up to our loftiest ideals? Do you want to try to actually realize the dream of our country? Or do you want to just follow Trump's lead and just be scared, racist, violent cowards who lash out at everything that is new or different, who lash out at immigrants, who lash out at trans people, who lash out at non-white people, who lash out at women, who lash out at people in other countries who are doing things differently than we are, who lash out at efforts to preserve the environment that we are so rapidly destroying? Is that the kind of country you want to be? You want to just huddle down and just be fearful and hateful and small-minded and just watch as the planet falls apart and we refuse to do anything about it because, hey, America first. Is that the kind of country you want to be? Because if you don't get out and vote tomorrow and vote for the right people, then that's what you're voting for with your inaction. If you vote Republican or you don't vote Democrat, that's the kind of thing that you're voting for. So if you have the tiniest inclination toward the left side of the political spectrum, if you look at what's happening in the country today in terms of immigrants, in terms of transgender rights, in terms of women's rights, in terms of rights for black people and other people of color, rights for the disabled, rights for people who have healthcare problems, if you think healthcare ought to be something that people can have and not have to go into debt or worry about facing utter financial ruin, if you're leaning in that direction, if you think that education is something that should be available to everyone and you shouldn't have to go into debt for the rest of your life in order to get it, if that's the kind of person you are, if those are your priorities, please, I'm asking you, if you haven't voted already, or if early voting isn't an option for you for whatever reason, go out tomorrow and vote for the most progressive candidates up and down the ballot. And once Democrats do get in power, as I've said a few times before, the job's not over. They're facing in the right direction for the most part, but they still need to be shoved. You know, you can't just say, well, I elected some Democrats, so everything's going to be fine now. No, they still need to be shoved. The Democratic politicians that we may elect tomorrow will probably be well-intentioned, but in many cases, they will not be overly courageous. They will not be overly motivated to do the right thing on their own. They will need to be shoved gently, lovingly, but they will need to be given a nudge in the right direction. Some of them may even need to be dragged, but they at least are facing the right way. And we need to send them to Washington. We need to send them to our state capitals. We need to send them to our county seats, to our city councils, wherever there are seats available, wherever there are positions up for election tomorrow. You need to vote for Democrats wherever possible, progressives wherever possible, and send them to positions of power, send them to represent you, and then keep on them. Push them to do the right thing, to protect people's rights, to protect the environment, to fight for health care as something that is accessible to everybody and affordable to everybody. Education, something that is accessible and affordable to everybody. You need to do that. And if you're a right-leaning person or a Republican person and you don't find me persuasive, I don't care. I'm not talking to you. But if you're a left-leaning person, if the society described by me in the last few minutes sounds like something you would like, a place of equality and justice, a place where education and healthcare are accessible to everybody, a place where we try to take care of the environment, a place where we welcome immigrants instead of fearing them and stoking hatred of them, The kind of place where when we see racists, when we see white supremacists, when we see organized white supremacists, neo-Nazis rising up, that we conk them on the head and force them back down. We don't invite them up and give them a microphone and say, let's hear from the Nazi. No, we fight them. We drive them back into the shadows and we keep them there. We keep them at bay. We keep them contained. We let them know that that doesn't fly here. That that's not what we want, that we don't want to hear from them. We don't care what they want. We don't care what they think. They're the enemy of a free society. They're an enemy of the kind of world we want to build. And as long as they hold to that ideology, they're not welcome here. And they're not going to gain footholds in our culture or certainly in our political system. And those that are already there should be driven out. If that's the kind of world you want, if that's the kind of society you want, if that sounds like something that's important to you, something that you would like to help make happen, then please go and vote for Democrats, vote for progressives. That's really the only message I have for you. Tomorrow's election day. If you haven't voted, show up tomorrow and vote. And vote for Democrats, vote for left-leaning candidates, because it might not be ideal. The Democratic Party, look, I'm a member of the Democratic Party. I registered Democrat 2 years ago because I wanted to vote in my state's primary, and Maryland has closed primaries. I registered Democrat after voting Democrat for my entire adult life. I finally decided to join the party, not because I think it's a perfect party, not because I think Democrats are all wonderful champions of liberty, because unfortunately they aren't. But because being a Democrat and doing what I can to drag that party in the right direction is, to me, the best use of my political energies. And if you think that too, or if there's even an inkling in your mind that that might be the better of the two most likely outcomes, then go vote tomorrow. Please, I'm begging you. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like the life and the future and the soul of your country depends on it, because it does.